Hello everybody, welcome back to the James Lawrence Allcott channel and another Euros preview. In this one we're going to be talking about Spain. It's Spain, but is it Spain? That's the question we're going to answer in this one. If you haven't checked out all the other Euro previews that we've done so far, make sure you go and check them out. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, of course, as we dive into not a mess, but an awkward squad that is in transition, trying to move on from the old glory years into the now. So in the last major tournament that Spain were involved in, they topped their group in 2018, but then of course went out on penalties to Russia. And it wasn't the leaving party that Andres Iniesta wanted to have. And what it highlighted was just how reliant this Spanish squad was on the older players and how moving on from that, they needed to start again and start to bleed in new players. But this is something that Spain didn't truly do. If you look at Mancini in Italy, and of course we've dived into that in that preview, we look at how he blooded so many new debutants in 2018 and 19 and then tapered off in 2020 to really kind of drive into an identity with the players that he'd given that experience to in the previous years. For Spain, it was a little bit different. If you look at that 2018 World Cup and the top performers, the 5 top performers were Isco, Diego Costa, Sergio Busquets, Sergio Ramos and Iniesta. What this highlights is that those older players were so integral in that team, and so they probably needed to kind of wash it away a little bit sooner, but you've still got players who offer a lot of output and are still, fantastic footballers. In fact, none of the top 10 performers on SofaScore from the World Cup are now under the age of 29. So what that highlights is that those wholesale changes weren't completely in front of your face, but probably was something that, it was like a plaster that needed to be ripped off. Luis Enrique, of course, became the manager in 2018. He had to leave his post in June 2019 and then returned in November 2019. So that also creates a bit of a stumbling block in how you want to kind of recycle the team and evolve the team. So Luis Enrique's come in and he's trying to bleed those younger players now. And in March 2021, for example, he did that. 4 uncapped players came into the side. Pedri, Robert Sanchez, the Brighton goalkeeper, Pedro Porro, the fullback for Sporting Lisbon, and Brian Gill, the winger for Eibar. 4 players that came in, which is fine and it's great, but it's a little bit too late. And is that going to hurt Spain down the road in terms of them figuring out where they are? And in those World Cup qualifiers, they struggled. They drew against Greece. They needed a 90th minute winner against 10-man Georgia. And they didn't look that great against Kosovo either. So the aura at the minute around this Spain team is one of real transition. A team that doesn't truly know what their plan is and certainly what their starting 11 is. One thing for certain is that Spain will keep the ball. That hasn't changed one bit, and you saw that in those 3 World Cup qualifiers, of course against lesser sides, but this is also maybe the stumbling block that you see with qualifying as a whole, is that you can't truly judge it. Total dominance for them in these games, 79% possession on average in those 3 games. In the Greece game in particular, they attempted 921 passes, 850 of those were successful. And that highlights a couple of things. It highlights that, yes, they are passing the ball and dominating possession. In that game specifically, they had 79% possession. But how much of those passes are safe and how many of those are meaningful passes? In that Greece game, they only had 2 shots on target and the goalkeeper only actually made 1 save in the entirety of the game. And so again, when I come back to kind of these headline victories or, dominating your qualifying, if you look at, say, that Germany result, which is something that I think a lot of pundits will naturally go to. Yes, they won 6-0 playing that way, but they're playing against a Germany team that also is struggling a little bit, as I go into on our preview with Germany. But it also fails to mention that just 3 days before that, they drew with a 10-man Switzerland side. As you can see from the lineups of the last 3 games, it's going to be a 4-3-3 or a 4-1-4-1. The big problem here, and which highlights again this element of transition that is happening within the squad and Spain as a whole under Luis Enrique since his return, is the personnel. Ferran Torres and Unai Simon are the only 2 players that have played in all 3 of those games. So it just highlights that he doesn't know who his starting 11 is, and the experimentation is happening just far too close to the tournament itself. In terms of some kind of consistency, at the back you were probably hoping that Sergio Ramos would come straight in, and at least that adds that kind of leadership and understanding of what's necessary to go and win tournaments. But he, as we all know, is not in the squad itself. There actually isn't a single Real Madrid player in the squad this tournament, which is outrageous in itself. That's not totally bad because you've got Aymeric Laporte, who's decided to kind of turn away from France and at 26 get himself some international football. It's not too bad moving from France to Spain. He will come in and be that left-sided centre-back, which is great because they don't really have that left-sided centre-back. So he will come in and that will be good. And I think despite him not playing the amount of minutes that he would have wanted to for Man City this season, I think we still feel like he is an elite centre-back. Another position along that back line that Spain fans will be concerned about is the right back position. At the moment, without Carvajal, you really are struggling to have an elite right back there. Marcos Llorente, the Atleti midfielder who can play on the right hand side, but normally it is in midfield, looks like he might be deputising there. But one name that you might want to keep an eye on is Pedro Porro, who made his debut in March, has had a great season for Sporting Lisbon. He might come in, and again, that just highlights how youth is such an important part of this transitional team. Moving on to midfield, and of course, as ever, Spain do have a lot of creativity, but again, they've got a lot of similar players. One player that looks like he's going to go into the stratosphere over the next couple of months and certainly the next couple of years is Pedri. Last season, he was playing in the second division. He was 16 years old and he's playing for Las Palmas. Now, he's had a full season for Barcelona and he's been fantastic for them. What's outrageous is that he's averaging 2.97 shot creating actions per 90, which is really good in a team full of creative superstars. And he's averaging 6.31 progressive carries per game. Again, for an 18-year-old, this is very solid. The stat that really blows me away, though, is that he's completed 26.8 90 minutes. So he's really got that experience kind of under his belt this season. He's been sort of supercharged when it comes to that experience, playing alongside the players that he has. You know, the creativity that he's got, the elegance that he's got with the ball. There are those gentle comparisons with Phil Foden. Maybe Phil Foden's a little bit more explosive, but what is very, very comparable between the two is that they are both beautifully technical players that could have massive, massive tournaments for their respective teams. He had 115 touches for Spain when he came and played for them, 78 passes and a 90% pass accuracy. That maybe comes down to that possession-based style that they have, and of course playing against lesser sides in the qualifying. But winning 8 of his 11 duels, I think, also highlights that he is a lot more sort of well-balanced as a player than people probably give him credit for. And I think the big thing to highlight is that Fabian Ruiz of Napoli was taken off before him, you know, an experienced performer. Really, you probably would have taken Pedri off. You would have said, well done, mate. You've done your bit, you've got your experience, now come off and let more experienced players come on. But they wanted him on the pitch. 3 players that have staked their claim over the last 18 months to be in that Spanish starting 11 are Thiago, Oyarzabal and Canales. All 3 kind of different players, but all 3 players that offer a lot of creativity. Starting off with Thiago, I think, look, when he walked off the field in that Champions League victory for Bayern Munich, you would have thought he is one of the first names on the team sheet for Spain. In that sort of holding midfield role, I think that moment's gone. You've got the likes of Busquets there, you've got the likes of Rodri there who might offer up that defensive solidity for them. So Thiago, his role, it might be a little bit further up the field. And this could work really well for both Thiago and the Spanish side. Because for a team that's going to have 80% possession, what's going to happen a lot of the time is actually that it's the tempo of how you're going to be able to break down teams. And so someone like Thiago, who's been able to kind of, you know, swivel his hips and sort of see the pass before the pass has been seen by anyone else, might be a great player to play a little bit further up the pitch and get the ball and then be able to play those passes into the likes of Pedri. Out wide, there's a battle between Dani Olmo and Oyarzabal. Mikel Oyarzabal is the kind of player that I think would be a better option because he offers a bit both when it comes to being a winger creator. He's got 11 goals and 8 assists this season. Now, it is a little bit padded with that because 6 of those are penalties, but they went out on penalties in 2018, so that's not the end of the world. I think what I like about them is to get those kind of assists with 41.8 touches per game is pretty impressive, actually. So in a better side that dominates, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. And I would look to kind of give him the opportunity a little bit more so than Dani Olmo, who's not as creative as Oyarzabal. And one final player to maybe keep an eye out for Spain in this tournament is Sergio Canales from Real Betis. He's a very Spanish creative midfielder, which I know sounds obvious, but you know what I'm talking about. Very similar to Isco in terms of his style. Creatively, he's excellent. And although he's only got 6 assists in La Liga this season, he actually created 13 big chances. So should have done a little bit better in terms of those, specific assist stats. And he also scored 8 goals for Real Betis as well. So a plethora of talent when it comes to being on the ball, being neat and tidy, being creative in the midfield, maybe the start of the final third. The reason I bring up all these players is that that's very Spanish, that's very in line with the identity of what you would expect. But the problem is further up the pitch. It looks like Alvaro Morata is going to be the main man for Spain up top in this tournament. And when you look at the past, the likes of David Villa and Fernando Torres, he just doesn't really reach those same heights. He's only scored 9 goals this season for Juventus. For Spain, he's scored 19 goals in 39 appearances. And to be fair to him, he's also got 9 assists for Juventus this season. The problem I have with him is he going to take the chances when they matter? International football is totally about that. And in particular, I think with all of these teams, yes, you can look at the group stage, which they should be quite comfortable in their group, I would imagine. But it's further down the line when you're not going to get those same amount of chances. And for a team that has so much possession and plays with quite a low tempo at times, are they going to be able to take the chances when they get them? And for Alvaro Morata, he lives offside, as we know. And also he's missed 14 big chances this season, which is... it's not horrific, but it's continuing on that trend that when he gets those opportunities, he's going to be one of two things. He's either going to miss the chance or he's going to be offside. I wonder if they need to go with Gerard Moreno. Gerard Moreno for Villarreal has had a fantastic season for them. And I think if you stay out the way of it being about big names, he has to play. In terms of goals, 23 goals in La Liga in 32 appearances, second in the top scorers list for La Liga. That's ahead of Karim Benzema. That's Karim Benzema of Real Madrid for a team that's, a lot further down the table than Real Madrid. He's got that kind of hybrid vibe about him a little bit, kind of a bit of an inside right. He's a little bit like a right winger. He's a little bit like a second striker. So maybe Luis Enrique wants that proper centre forward, but I believe that he is. I think he can play in that role and he'll do a lot more work and maybe create space for the opposition as well. So to reiterate the point, this is not the Spain of old. There isn't the same amount of star power that there has been in the past, but it's still a very strong Spanish squad. And looking at the group stages and putting together a prediction for Spain, I think you can see what's going to happen here. I think they'll get through the group. I think they'll get through the group quite positively. I think they'll top that group. It's later down the line that they're going to struggle. And my prediction for Spain is that they will go out at the quarterfinal stage. The reason why I say that is because if they win their group, they will play a team that finishes third amongst the other groups in Euro 2020. I expect that they would be able to navigate that. The problem with that quarterfinal is that you're most likely going to be playing a big hitter, because that other round of 16 game that leads into that quarterfinal will be between the winner of Group D, most likely England, and the second place team from Group F, which is the group of death, which involves France, Germany, and Portugal. So once it gets to that quarterfinal, I think that team will probably have a little bit too much. For a Spanish side that feels like it lacks a bit of balance, has a few gaps in it, and as I said, doesn't have that same world-class star power as it has done. So that's my prediction, but what do you guys think? Let me know down below. If you haven't checked out the other Euros previews, make sure you go and check them out. We're diving into them and the tactics and the strengths and the weaknesses of all of them. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do consider hitting the like button, and also check out who are assisting me with all these beautiful animations. Massive thank you to them. I'll see you in the next one.